Welcome friends, and thank you so much for tuning in. As promised, in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the strategies that I personally used with clients to help them secure a property to rent despite having a low credit score. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to go over exactly what I meant about having a low credit score. I'm referring to a score anywhere in the range from 550 to 650. Now, all the strategies that I'm going to share with you today are based on my clients having a credit score within that range. So I don't have any experience working with clients with a credit score in the low 400s or the low 500s, so I just wanted to make that clear. Now, one of the strategies that has been extremely effective for many of my clients is to have a cosigner or guarantor added to their application. Now, for those of you that may not know what a guarantor is, it is a person that is making a promise to be responsible for any rent payments that are missed or not paid for by the person on the lease. Now, based on that explanation, that's a huge responsibility. So when my clients decide to use this strategy as an option, I advise them to explain and outline all the responsibilities their future guarantor would have, just so that that guarantor is able to know exactly what they would be getting themselves into. Now, because your guarantor holds such a strong component to your overall rental application, it's important that your guarantor have a really strong profile. So I advise my clients to look out for certain factors when looking for a guarantor. And those factors are to have a guarantor that has a credit score of 700 or above, to have their income be able to not only sustain the rent payment, but any personal expenses that they may have, and to be in their current job for at least 2 years. When my clients have looked for guarantors that meet the profiles that I just mentioned, they were able to really strengthen their overall rental application. Another strategy that many of my clients have used is to provide the landlord with advanced rent payments. Now, when using this strategy, it's important to note that in many cases, this lump sum of money is going towards the end of your lease term. Let me give you an example. So say we've entered into a lease agreement for 1 year. We've provided the landlord with our deposit, which includes our first month's rent and our last month's rent. And now we've decided that we would like to provide the landlord with 4 months rent up front. That 4 months of rent is now going to go towards our month 11, 10, 9, and 8. So that advanced rent payment has gone towards the end of our lease term. So now we're still responsible for paying rent in the beginning of the term. So we would still be responsible for paying month 2, month 3, and so forth. So the reason why I think it's really important to explain exactly what advance payments would look like for you is because you're providing a lump sum of money, a big lump sum of money that is now going towards the end of your lease term, and you're still having to find funds to be able to pay for the beginning of your lease term. So I want to make sure that my clients are not stretching themselves too thin financially if they decide to choose this option. So by outlining exactly what it would entail, it's able to give them a better understanding on whether this strategy would be worth it for them. The next strategy I'm going to share with you has been extremely helpful for many of my clients, and that strategy is sharing their story. Now, when you're applying for a property to rent, you're providing the landlord with a ton of documentation, your credit score and report, your pay stubs, and so forth. And all this information outlines a lot about your profile, but it doesn't share anything about you as a person or your situation. When that landlord sees that low credit score, they don't really understand what happened in that particular circumstance to get you where you're at. So by providing the landlord with a brief bio, whether that be writing a letter, an email, maybe setting up an in-person meeting to have a chat with them, or a Zoom meeting, you're able to now provide information as to what happened to you in life that ended up making your score a little bit lower, and what you're doing to help strengthen or help better that situation. Now, this strategy is not always effective. Ultimately, the landlord can decide whether they want to choose you or not based on your story or not, right? But I've been able to hear right from the landlords that they are really appreciative of the transparency and the truth and the honesty that potential clients are putting forth when they're providing a story on top of their application. In many of these cases, it's helped the landlords have a little bit more perspective as to what's happening in that person's life, and in turn, they're willing to give them a chance. In order to explain a little bit further as to why I'm so passionate about this particular strategy, I just want to share with you a story that I think many of you can relate to. So when I first got out of university, I was applying for my first real job. It was a really big deal for me. It's a job that I've always wanted, and I was really nervous but really adamant on getting this position. And when I was in the interview and they went over my resume, they decided that I didn't have all the qualifications needed for this position. And I was devastated when I heard that, but I was not ready to leave that interview without letting them know why they needed to choose me for this job. And I ended up giving them every reason as to why they needed to pick me and pick me now. I was letting them know that I was willing to do whatever it takes to learn additional information that I needed to know for this job, that I would provide so much of value, and that the passion that I had for clients was going to help their overall organization and provide so much of value to their company. And in the end, I landed the job. They could see how passionate I was about wanting the position, what I would do for their organization, that they ended up changing their mind and giving me a chance. And by explaining this story to you, it just gives you a little bit more perspective as to what providing the landlord with your story might do for your application. It might open up their eyes to see the situation that you're in and end up giving you a chance. One last note that I wanted to make about this strategy of sharing your story is that it has helped so many of my newcomer clients. And let me explain. So when a newcomer has entered into the country, they most likely have not been here for a lengthy period of time before they start searching for a home to rent. And in that case, they have not had a lot of time to actually build their credit. So the low credit score that's showing up on their application is not low because they have a ton of debt or because they have made poor financial decisions. It's just on the lower side because they haven't had enough time to accumulate a higher credit score. So in this particular situation, it has been extremely helpful for my newcomer clients to explain and to provide the landlord with some type of a bio so that the landlord can now understand why their score is on the lower side. And in many of these cases, my clients were given a chance after the landlord hearing their story. The last strategy that has been very effective for many of my clients is having an advocate. And what I mean by this is working with a professional, working with a realtor. A lot of the clients that I've worked with have been trying to find rentals on their own at first, and because they've been unsuccessful, they decided to find a professional to work with. So some of the ways that I was able to help them actually get into a rental was the fact that they were open to a lot more options in terms of rental properties that were available. Because when they were searching for properties on their own, they were basically just referring to properties that were listed by the landlord directly. So the pickings were a little bit slimmer in that case, whereas when working with myself, they were open up to all the listings on the MLS system. I hope these strategies were helpful. If you think that this video would help anybody that's looking for a property to lease with a low credit score, please feel free to share it with them. And if you have any strategies that I haven't mentioned but have worked for you, please feel free to comment. I would love to hear them. Thank you guys so much for giving me your time. I truly appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.